This is the Nomad Futurist podcast, a podcast about the evolution of technology, society, and transformation. Connect with us, share your thoughts with us at nomadfuturist.com. Let's get this started. Here are Phil and Nabeel.
Hello. Welcome, Nomad Futurist. This is your co-host, Nabeel Mahmood, currently from Kailua Kona, Hawaii.
This is your co-host, Philip Gomez from Montclair, New Jersey.
And this is Luke Kipfer from beautiful Ashburn, Virginia.
Luke, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Let's start to get to know you a little bit. Could you tell us, what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run powerhouse data centers, execution of all of our projects. So manage the deployment and build of our data centers right now in Northern Virginia, but expanding on. So, I've been in the construction industry my entire life, joined AREP Powerhouse over the last year. So, really dedicated mission critical last 13, 14 years of my life. So, I just love being a part of the data center industry.
Now, how did you get involved in the data center industry? Just looking through your background, you've got a bachelor's degree in project management and operations, and a master's degree in project management. Now, where was that spinoff? How did you get involved in the whole data center nerdy stuff?
This is one of my favorite questions that you guys always ask, because everyone does have a really diverse way of how they came into this industry. I was 17, straight out of high school, went right into the trade. So went right to work for a mechanical contract. We did a lot of specialty systems. We did some mission critical, some telco, but also, healthcare, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, some specialty refrigeration systems. And that aspect, the mission critical aspect of it, always really interested me. I was working for a mechanical contractor for 7 or 8 years. Where I was in upstate New York, and that contractor was really pivoting away from some of the specialty systems and into more of a commercial model. And that's not the way I saw myself going or my career going. So, that what I would call 10, 20% of what I was doing that was mission critical, that always resonated with me. And I said, I need to do this full time. So, started looking for, other positions within the industry, knew I was going to move, and, ended up making the move to Boston to Markley Group, who's a retail colo provider and really the carrier hotel of New England.
All right. So before we get into all of that stuff.
Yeah.
When did you start working? 17?
17. So I started, summers in high school before that. If it was one thing my dad drilled into me, it was work ethic. So it was, up on job sites, when I didn't have school and on summers. And so, I was 17 years old, straight out of high school, watching coils on, Lever System 3 crack unit.
I'm going to start checking into some of the child labor laws in upstate New York.
Well, yes. I think he got the dad sign off. But, all right. As a 17-year-old, how did you end up picking mechanical systems?
So I did it. It was one of those, my dad was in the trades. He was a mechanical contractor. I would say at that point in my life, if I would have went straight into higher education, straight into college, I wouldn't have gotten the value out of it that I did going back later in life. I just frankly wasn't, emotionally or mentally mature enough to see the value in that higher education. And, so I sitting around the house wasn't an option. So I was going to work. So, it was straight to the job site right out of high school, which was amazing. Honestly, I'm very glad that my path took me that way. And I was, carrying tools, working on job sites 7 or 8 years of my professional career. And it just gave me a real appreciation for not just the people that do that, but really what goes into making a project successful and, some of those real constraints that, potentially getting a project management degree and sitting behind a desk doesn't really teach you.
I think there's something to be said for that. The notion of, I think when I was a kid also, there was always this notion that, you needed to have, a job. You needed to understand, at the time it was like, understand the value of money. Don't just come to me asking me for, money to go to a movie or something. Just, try to understand that fundamental value of money. And it seems like that kind of ethos has kind of changed a little bit. It's not really about the job and the value of money these days anymore, as much as it is. Everything has become, resume building and, try to set yourself up to be, best suited for university and the experience and all of that. because it's become a rat race. You have to apply in my circles, you have to apply to put kids into elementary school. You have to do certification. That's nuts. Whereas, when I was a kid, and, looking at me, you wouldn't be able to tell this. It wasn't that long ago. When I was a kid, you went to the school that was closest to your house, like a bus came to pick you up, or God forbid you walked to school, which, these days they probably call Child Protective Services on school. And it the working element of it just became about, paying your way and understanding the value of money rather than trying to, establish some sort of resume that you're building from the time you're a kindergartner. And the value of that work that you experienced and that experience feels like it's so much more valuable than just trying to, suggest that you were, doing something on the side or working for some, organization that is associated with, just something that's not as physical as tangible.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I think we're really doing, the youth a little bit of a disservice by not pushing trades more heavily on kids coming out of school. Cause I got to imagine there are a lot of people that were in the same position that I was, that, it's just going straight to college out of high school isn't for everyone. And frankly, there's some really lucrative jobs in the trades too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a plumber that doesn't make six figures. If you go to high schoolers, they don't understand those kind of things. And it not just the financial rewards, but there's something really fulfilling about going to a job, doing a project, and seeing that tangible completion at the end, where you can drive by a building and say, I built that building. I've installed those chillers there. There's really something fulfilling about, at the end of the day, seeing your hard work manifest itself into a project that's hard to get anywhere else.
And the thing about a trade that's so interesting is, people, you use it in everyday life. It's just like, I look at my kids are young, right? So they're 6 and 10 years old. My son clogs the toilet. It's like I have become the plumber, so being able to allow, people to understand how to actually do things for themselves is a lost art. And I knew this when I started raising my kids. There is just no way I'm going to be the one that shows them how to be a man. Cause I think, it's not me. That thankfully, I have Cub Scouts to teach them how to tie knots, how to do any of that stuff. But, it's so valuable to have real world experience in things like trades that you use in your everyday life. And it's like a superpower.
Yeah, I think that's kind of lost over the years, especially with, there was a period of time where degrees were more important than the skill set and or trades. And I believe where we are at right now, it's sort of coming back whereby, it's being recognized that there isn't enough people doing the trades. There's more people wanting corner office jobs. So tell us about your siblings. Anybody else in the tech industry? Of course, there's that influence from your dad being in the mechanical element of her business, and that was your influence to get into the data center space. Anybody else in your family that's in this space or was influenced to get into the space?
No, really. It was just, me along this path. I've got older sister, younger sister, both amazing, both super successful, but for better or for worse, I'm the only one that sits around the dinner table and talks about data centers. So.
Well, there you go. At least someone's talking about data centers.
They don't want to listen to me, but I'm still talking about them.
Well, if you told them how much they rely upon them and they don't know it, it's probably...
Wait, sis, I'm going to turn off your TikTok account.
Yeah.
All right. So then you decided to go to school after your 10-year spell as a service manager and service technician. Why did you end up picking project management versus you were on the mechanical end? Was there a reason why you chose not to pursue mechanical engineering or any other engineering for that fact?
Ultimately, it was just the way I think I developed professionally, that I understood I'm a better project manager than I'm a tradesman. Right? You know what I mean? I do a better job managing product than I do building things. There's some amazing skilled tradesmen out there. And while I did it for a while, I fully understand there's a great deal of people who are a lot better at it than I was. So it really just aligned with the way, the way my brain works, or the way I like to see projects executed. And the one thing I like about project management is that you see the whole picture, right? If you go to mechanical engineering, you've got to understand how your systems interact with the building, but ultimately you're a little bit tunnel vision on mechanical engineering, right? And certainly for several of the other aspects. But with project management, you're starting from the very need of a project, the very need of some new feature of some new building. I mean, you see it all the way through. So I really like back to that job satisfaction. I really like the satisfaction of seeing projects, seeing ideas come all the way from that initial light bulb that goes off in someone's head all the way until we're, actually deploying compute power. So that aspect of project management has really always been very interesting.
It makes all the sense in the world to me from the outside. If anybody asks me what I do after getting the blank stare about trying to explain to them what a data center is over the course of the last 30 years, at the end of the day, I look at myself as a problem. And the best mechanical engineers I've ever worked with, the best, HVAC technicians and UPS technicians I've ever worked with, understand fundamentally why you're utilizing the systems that they're working on. And frankly, the best data center technicians I've ever worked with, the ones that have gone on in their career, have exhibited a kind of curiosity about, the entire, the entire scope of what we do, what our customers do, why they use the environments that we maintain. So, I totally get it. I think it gives you more visibility and probably, a more fulfilling, kind of scope of work, because you kind of, it's tangible, it's real. The stuff that you do, you kind of understand how it's being used.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as into the project management piece in school, and even when you came out of school, was there a particular focus that you had? Like you wanted to focus mechanical, electrical, construction, any vertical, or was it pretty generic?
No, it was pretty generic. I was with my background in mechanical contracting. I've always, been pulled to that aspect of the industry a little bit more than others. But, understanding going into data centers, especially when I went to data centers full time, was really, leveling up, especially on the electrical side, and then understanding the whole ecosystem. So, certainly love, the full life cycle of the project, though I wouldn't call myself a specialist. I really love, which is one of the great things that in my role now is, really taking projects from site selection and acquisition all the way up to a fully commissioned data center. So really being able to see from the real estate side, from the lending side, from the zoning and permitting side, all the way to, working with the design team, working with the contractors, working with the end user requirement. So, it's amazing to drive by a piece of dirt you don't own and then drive by it 3 years later and there's a data center there that's supporting load. Like that's just, that's what I'm here for. That it's just a very fulfilling aspect of the job.
I think that's got to be the most exciting feeling. When you drive by a building, that's what I built.
Yeah. No, I love driving down Loudon Common Parkway and seeing our signs on buildings under construction. That it's what I wake up for in the morning.
Do you have favorites? It's like you have to ask, like you ask, like your children ask you, because all of them are to a certain extent your children. Right? What's your favorite building?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have a favorite building. It's really, to me, more the relationships and the teams that I work with on the building. Like I love the buildings, and when I drive by, I get that sense of fulfillment. But I think less about the building and think about who I work with on that project to build the building. And that's one aspect about project management that I love, is that collaboration and the communication with such a diverse group of teams that you need to execute on those projects. But, I'll drive by a building and laugh because I was like, I remember when the architect I was on this one made this mistake, or, not the
I knew that you get remembered by your mistakes. Nobody ever remembers the good stuff. I remember the mistakes.
Well, yeah, we want to hear one or two of those mistakes.
But yeah, it's really the people and the teams. When I look back on some of my favorite projects, it's really anchored in the people that executed on those projects, with me versus a big hunk of concrete with some chillers in it.
So speaking of a big hunk of concrete with some chillers in it, I think people understand construction. They understand mechanical engineering. They understand cooling and water towers. What is it? What do you think has either surprised you the most or is most unique about applying construction and project management and mechanical engineering to the kind of data center or mission critical infrastructure that you've been managing over the course of the last, oh my God, it's been 20 years now.
The aspect that I really focus on is really the criticality of it. I think in a lot of other industries, failures of equipment, failures of processes, failures of design are, I don't want to say tolerated, but they're more accepted within the industry, where in the data center industry, it's not. So, going into projects that are, they're all aggressive schedules, right? I don't know if I've ever gotten a data center project and be like, wow, yeah, that's really going to be easy to get done on. Like they're all super aggressive schedules behind, everyone's building as fast as they can. And the margin for error is just so small. One design error can cause a failure. One thing you missed on commissioning, mistorquing lugs on a UPS. There's just so many little things that can lead to such disastrous results that, being able to move so quickly, but have such an attention to detail is really what, attracted me to the industry. And I think it is, the best people from other industries here as well. There's plenty other, if you're building out office spaces or you're building out, hotels or apartments, I think there's people that fit into that role. And I think it takes a special individual to really thrive under, that extra level of stress that comes along with mission critical and data center build.
That's why we earned, Nabeel accepted from this thing being the exception to the rule, is we've earned our hairlines. Although yours frankly looks like more of a choice than mine is, but I'm going to put us in the same.
If I had hair like Nabeel, I would grow it out too. So
it's true. Well, it's clearly he's not been on the commissioning side as much as
save a lot of money on conditioners.
Yeah, I've earned other stripes, Phil.
And I get it. You've earned all the gray. Gray is.
So Luke, share with us what's the most exciting thing about what you do.
I think for me personally, it's seeing how the industry changes. It's obviously the way we're doing data center builds and deployments now are very different than we did it 10 years ago, very different from 5 years ago, and an extreme polar opposite from 10 years ago, right? So in terms of, excitement, great thing about my position is that we're working with some of the biggest hyperscalers, the biggest operators in the market, the people that are really driving new technologies, that are driving sustainability, that are driving initiatives, and have the capital to be able to make those changes. So to really be on the forefront of that and see, hey, we're working with hyperscaler X. They're deploying this new cooling methodology, and to see how that new technology impacts and how we're able to keep up with this crazy demand curve of, increased needs as well too. So the industry is great because it's so dynamic and it's always changing. There's always new technologies. There's always new needs to fulfill. There's always new constraints. So really being on kind of the cutting edge and seeing what's next, that's what's most exciting for me.
We haven't talked about your transition from Boston down to Loudoun County and Ashburn, but you're in probably the most dense corridor of data center builds on the planet. And, to pull on that thread of constraints, you hear all these stories about how, there's limited power. I think, did I see something where Robert Duvall is now at 93 years old, protesting a data center build in Prince William County, which, I couldn't be more timely, right, than this conversation. He's probably protesting one of them. So, what is that process like, in terms of, does anything surprise you there? Like, I imagine a hyperscaler comes to you and says, you know what, we need another, I don't even know what the 10 megawatts, 30 megawatts. I don't know what the characteristics of the facilities they look to you to build are, but, how do you deal with determining whether you have that capacity, and is that constraint an issue in where you are today?
Certainly the constraints are an issue. Anyone following Northern Virginia knows the issues that Dominions had with the transmission constraints. Obviously, a very vocal neighbor protest and Prince William County with what they're doing there with
We're talking to you, Duvall.
And one thing, even in Loudoun County, Loudoun County is getting stricter with zoning regulations for data centers. They're being much more prescriptive and intentional on where they're allowing data centers to be built, what areas of the county data centers should go in and what areas of the county's data centers shouldn't go in. And part of that too is, especially in Ashburn, all the 2, 3, 4-story data centers that are going in as well too. So that shift to going vertical, especially in Northern Virginia, at one time there's all these 1-story data centers, and it could be one thing to a neighbor, but if all of a sudden you're putting in a 4-story data center, that thing's not flying under the radar, right? Like you see that thing from a long ways away. So I think that has really ramped up in terms of the necessity for neighbor relations, for people to understand the benefits of data centers, what they're doing to the tax base in Loudoun County, what they provide in terms of, they're not adding traffic, they're adding this huge amount of tax revenue, and they're satisfying a need for that area, for that neighborhood, the amount of high paying tech jobs they bring in. So I think it's really education of the community, education of the neighbors to understand these aren't big, giant environmental disasters that are going next to your building. Like these are there to serve a need of the community. They're bringing in great jobs. They're paying in tons of taxes. They're not contributing traffic, just trying to get people to understand what they are. Back to your point, when you say what you do and people give you a blank stare because they don't know what data center is, there's a lot of scare out there that, they're just these big, noisy, loud pollution sites. So it's really raising the level of education with some of these communities to show the benefits of having data centers there.
No question. I think that's the biggest misconception, right? That they're big environmental disasters. One of the things we say all the time is that, we're one of the few industries where our bottom lines are positively impacted the more efficient we make the data center, because power is such a huge cost for data centers. So we're the only ones that aren't just performative in our, sustainability goals, not because we're the best people in the world, but because there's an economic impact to making things as efficient as possible.
How do you think we need to actually educate the broader audience, and especially these local folks that have zero idea what data and data center is? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I think there's several prongs to the approach. Part of it comes on with one, developers like what I'm working for to try and educate. I think that it needs to be an approach from different levels. We need to have local community government support. We have to have the people within the government understand the benefits of the data centers and be able to help educate the people in their area. I think as operators of data centers, we need to be involved in community relations. And then, local trade organizations, for example, we're hosting a 5K with 7x24 DC chapter next month, where Data Center Coalition is doing, a kind of a data center job fair where people can come in and learn about data centers and jobs within the data centers and what they are, and that they're not these big, scary environmental disasters, that, they're really a added benefit to the community when they go in. So I don't think there's not one single solution, right? It's not just saying, hey, developers need to go out and run a PR campaign. It's not just the government side. It's really a relationship with everyone that touches the industry to be proactive on these neighbor relations, not just go in, file a site plan for 300 megawatts worth of data center build and wait for the neighbor reaction. Like, we as an industry need to be ahead of it in terms of getting the message out there and educating the communities that these things are built in.
If only there was a foundation that was created to focus on the education.
Exactly.
What a perfect segue. What a
segue. Yeah.
What a segue. Amazing. You know what? We're bringing you with us on the road. This is so good. But look, I think one of our core goals at Nomad Futurist Foundation is not just to educate communities once they get to the point where, they have a 92-year-old man picketing in front of a data center site, but to try to get, the younger generation engaged and recognizing that data centers are what are enabling all of the applications they're using in their regular lives. I have, again, a 6 and a 10-year-old who are being taught in school as part of their STEAM programs how Google Classroom works. And they know how to do it perfectly. What they don't know is why Google Classroom works. Because to them, it just even to the teachers, in many cases, they take for granted the fact that there's just some way that something in some random 150-year-old school in a suburban New York community is somehow connecting to a data center that you built in Ashburn. And it's just magically happening through, the air.
Cloud.
So the more we can educate on a younger basis, the more we can avoid what is happening now. Anytime you look at Congress and they're like bringing the tech executives in front of Congress. They're asking them the most embarrassing questions you could possibly, like having, your grandparents, and I'm not trying to age shame anyone. It's just like, trying to get Tim Cook to explain why, Elon Musk's application works a certain way on his phone. It's just like relationally, it doesn't, it's like, that's not the part that I control on the thing. And part of that is, not really like being so reliant on technology without providing the foundational tools that people need throughout their education, from early childhood education through, continuing education, on how all of these things we're using. How could you expect anyone to understand how any of this works if we're just, as part of the sales pitch for any of these applications, we're making them feel like it's magic?
Yeah.
Well, that's what's been promoted over the years. And unfortunately, being a very young industry, and growing at the rate that we have grown, we have actually forgotten what foundational elements mean. And we don't talk about the criticality or the reason what we are doing, why we're doing it. So I've got a question for you, and you're probably the right guy for this. In the gold rush era, everybody moved out west. In the data rush era, everybody's moving out east. And Ashburn is 2/3 of the data compute. With all the limitation, restrictions, and concerns that are coming forth, particularly in Loudoun County, what do you see the future of compute, particularly in the East Coast, is?
Yeah, these traditional hubs like Ashburn aren't going to go away, right? At least not in any time in the foreseeable future. Ashburn's still going to be a extremely desirable place to deploy your capacity. But yeah, what we're seeing in some of the tier 2 markets now is an insane amount of growth for some of these markets. Certainly, look at Quantum Loophole. 5 years ago, would you think that anyone would be successul doing gigawatts in Maryland?
Yeah, and 5 years ago, that would have been vaporware.
Yeah. It's certainly pushing towards tier 2 market. Outside of neighbor relations, outside of power, just look at the land cost in Ashburn, Virginia for a zone data center site. It just, there's no way that the growth that they've had, at least in terms of sprawl, is going to be sustainable. What I would see in mature markets like Ashburn is redevelopment of existing data center sites. So going back to that data center that was built 10, 15 years ago as a single story and 125 watts a square foot or something like that, that gets scraped, that gets built down, and then you've got a multi-story denser data center going in its place. But ultimately, with the power constraints, with the neighbor relations, with land costs, the data center sprawl in Loudoun is going to be constrained, and it's certainly what's happened here with Dominion has pushed a lot of major projects to secondary towards tier 2 markets. One comment I heard just a couple of weeks ago was that, years ago, everyone was chasing the hyperscalers around, right? A hyperscaler would go make a new availability zone, do a big campus somewhere, and people would bet that they'd expand and then go buy a land around the hyperscaler. It's to the point now where they're going wherever the power is, right? So if you go take down a site and you've got, 800 acres and, 300-400 megawatts, they'll come to you versus you chasing them around. So it's a really change in the market dynamic, because it's not just Ashburn, Chicago, Santa Clara. There's a lot of markets that are really getting power constrained. So, if you're able to get a campus-sized site that's developable for data center and has power availability, even if it's not in what would be traditionally a data center market, you've got a good chance to get that thing leased.
Well, what's amazing about it is a lot of the hyperscalers now have become, full scale network companies. They can bring fiber to themselves in a way that, they were not able to several years ago, both subsea, transatlantic, and you have Google laying fiber throughout the US. And that was unthinkable for those types of companies to even endeavor to accomplish. So they can connect however they need to connect. And there are entire businesses, we have a podcast coming out in a couple of weeks where, there are entire businesses that are based on taking abandoned, power plants that are no longer, operating in a way that's not necessarily, sustainable for future growth, and leveraging the fact that you have the distribution networks from those power plants there in order to, make them, potential, huge energy sites that can be repurposed for data center development globally. And that becomes the main draw. So, it's interesting to, again, that being able to have that 30,000 foot view where you understand, the various components that go into what makes a site attractive, and recognizing that the evolution of the data and the evolution of where these things need to be is just going to continue. You could use the word sprawl, you can use, whatever. It's just going to continue to creep, to use the worst possible word, into every one of these other markets, and the distributed, compute as the eyeballs tend, about of the major populated cities, and you have network connectivity that's available all over there's not going to be many markets that don't have some level of data center, construction being a part of their core, development plan.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Luke, what are some of the challenges that you foresee that we need to get ahead of? Sustainability is a major thing that's being talked about. Energy efficiency, green, those are some of the core elements that are being talked about. What do you think is the biggest thing that we need to get in front of?
Honestly, I wouldn't want to say the biggest thing. I would lump it into tiers, right? I would say the top tier concern that we really need to get in front of is like you said, sustainability. Right now, at least from my view, sustainable land use and responsible land use is important, because we're no longer talking about taking down 10, 15, 20 acre sites. We're talking about taking down 600, 800, 1,000 acre sites. So we're really understanding how that fits into, the local ecosystem is extremely important. And then as power densities go up, obviously sustainability becomes more of an issue. And then the other one is really the skill shortage. As we try and become better as an industry, as we try to be more efficient, as we try to be more sustainable, those type of goals, and those require resources, right? Like it's hard to build a perfect sustainability program when you can't staff projects and you're just running around trying to put out the next fire, right? So we need to make sure we're attracting the best and the brightest into the industry, that we're able to get people to bring lessons learned from other industries to really apply to data centers to help us grow. So, I think especially on the sustainability side, collaboration and making sure the industry is properly staffed with the right people is going to be key for us to be able to meet these compute demand growth.
It's amazing. You're basically sharing your value proposition. Believe me, folks, I did not tell Luke to say the human capital deficit, education, sustainability. Those are things that we do talk about all the time. So, Luke, thank you very much. This is perfect pitch.
The nice thing about Luke also is he would be perfect for my caricature. So it's like there's a picture of Luke in our little logo here. A little different. Something you need to work on your 5 o'clock shadow. Besides that,
when people are talking about, they are real issues, right? It's not that it's just they're certainly impactful now, and as time goes on, as the industry grows, as we take down bigger sites, more power, as Philip creeps around and expands data centers, we're gonna need more people. That's all there is to it.
That human capital deficit and education is something that's near and dear to us, and that's the reason the Nomad Futurist Academy and the foundation. All right, I'm going to try to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Explain your job to a fourth grader.
Let me get my son. No, you know what? He's not here. I almost had a fourth grader for you to explain it to.
Yeah, I've heard various plays on this question, and I've heard some people that give just amazing, succinct, or really great answers, and I never have a good answer to this question, right? I am not one of those people that can really summarize it, So I ultimately at the end of the day, I'm building big computer rooms. That's what I'm building the infrastructure that houses the back end of what you're using every day on a daily basis. I don't have kids, so I don't talk to a lot of fourth graders, so I don't know. They're probably smarter than I am, frankly, but I've heard that question many different ways. And honestly, I've always wondered how I'm going to answer it. I don't have a good answer.
I'll give you the answer. I'll give you the answer for a fourth grader specifically. I'm building like I'm in Minecraft in order to support your ability to use Minecraft.
Phil obviously spends a lot of time, but I would say that you did a pretty good job. All right. So knowing what you know today and based on your journey and having that practical trades experience, what would you do differently, if anything? Would you take the same career path, or would you, look at something differently?
The only thing I would do differently is I would reach out for help sooner. One of the things that I really like about this industry is, once I became more established and once I had relationships, I do like to go and ask for help, whether it's peers, whether it's competitors, whether it's designers or builders, but, I can reach out. I've never reached out to anyone in the industry and gotten a cold shoulder or someone not been willing to help me. So, if I went through this path, I believe that, I would have accelerated my career growth if I just asked for help more, asked for mentorship more. Like I said, the industry is filled with so many great, intelligent people that are willing to help you. You just need to come out and say, hey, listen, I'm an APM over here. This is where I want to be in my career. What do you think I should do next? I think if I did more of that when I was younger, I would have, I loved my journey and I wouldn't change it, but I think I would have gotten a more defined path earlier if I just reached out to people that were in the positions I wanted to be in and just said, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee. I need help. And I haven't done that to anyone, and them not giving me great feedback and great answer and have been totally open about it. So.
And I think it's a great point, and it's not your fault. It's more societal, right? We're taught to, fake it until we make it. We're taught to, and to a certain extent, life is a confidence game. I get it. You need to be confident about it, and you don't want to be, you don't want to tiptoe around anything. But at the end of the day, showing vulnerability is not weakness. It's strength. And, anyone that isn't willing to help you, it says more about them than it does about you. And like you said, our industry is full of people. We need help. Like everybody in our industry has this recognition that, we need to establish the future leaders of tomorrow, because Nabeel and I need to be able to retire at some point. It's been crazy. Anyway,
before I start losing my hair.
Yeah, I can't. I think that ship has sailed, man. I think it's
it's too late for some of us.
It's yeah. Anyway, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us. I think your path from mechanical engineer tradesman to being at the forefront of building in our industry is the exact right path that I think people don't necessarily recognize that they could take. So I think it's valuable.
Yeah, it's certainly a phenomenal story to share from where you started to where you're at today. That's what we're trying to enforce and share with the younger generation. There's a lot of sub-verticals within the industry, and there's a lot of ways that you can actually get into this industry and be successful. And what you said, ask for help and look for mentors, that's what's going to redefine and change the future.
And the other thing that you said about supporting the Nomad Futurist Foundation against all else, because just perfect foundation at the right time.
Taking the words right out of my mouth,
And you have the best haircut ever. I mean, it's perfect.
Thank you, Luke, for taking the time to join us today. This has been absolutely phenomenal. Really enjoyed getting to know you, and I hope to see you soon in person.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
This has been great. Nothing lasts forever. Markets will come back, currencies will rebound, businesses will go on, and we'll all move on. That could happen next week, next month, or next year. I'm confident that those who prepare rather than panic will come out of this stronger. Thank you for joining us. This has been brought to you by Nomad Futurist. Check us online at nomadfuturist.com.